My name is Miguel Escobar, and my favorite Power Query feature is the rank transform. Welcome to Power Query Magic.
Welcome, Miguel.
Thank you. How are you, man?
I am good. Or should I call you Mike?
Internally in Microsoft, yeah, people call me Mike, but that's because my bosses call me Miguel, so...
It's a good differentiator.
Yeah.
It's and why Mike? Who came up with Mike?
Mike, it was, I guess that it was just what my friends used to call me when I was growing up. So my friends, very close friends, call me Mike here in Panama.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay. So a question for you. You play music. I can see in the background there you've got your drum kit and things.
Yeah.
How many other people in the band?
It's just me. It's
Just
really
you?
just me.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just me. And what I do is that I sometimes get like guest musicians to help me. So session musicians or you know, a singer that's gonna help me, you know, finish the songwriting and sing the actual song.
Right. So okay. So you're having a chat with them, you know, in the break or whatever you're doing, and they say, so, you know, is this your full-time job? And you say no. You're not a full-time musician. So what do you say? What is your role? How do you explain it to people?
I mean, what I do is I'm just living life, trying to you know, make the best out of it at this moment. Sometimes I just switch the roles depending on who I'm talking to. Sometimes I just tell like, hey, I'm a book author, you know,
Right.
and then
Okay.
I tell all the people like, no, I made this book with someone that I didn't even meet in person, and then tell the story about Ken and I. But you know, if I had to define myself, I guess I'm more of a tech guy. You know, at a core, I'm a tech guy. I really like data, so I'm more of a data guy. So even when I'm doing either the book or even when I'm doing the music, there's a lot of data that comes into play. Even when making music, you're gonna find, you know, MIDI and all of those files, all of that data, and it all has to make sense at the end.
Yeah. I used to be really into sort of all the sequencer stuff and MIDI and all this sort of thing when I was like 15. I had a couple of keyboards set up, all linked up to a computer with, like a 12-track sequencer and all this sort of stuff. And I thought it was magic. It was just, you know, this technology was just amazing. You could record things and play it back and add extra tracks and layer stuff. So what software do you use these days? Because I'm totally out of touch now.
So I personally use something that is called Logic in Apple OS or Mac OS.
Okay.
But when I'm working with my producer or when I'm working with someone who's mixing or mastering the track, they are primarily using Avid Pro Tools. So I have both of them, but I primarily use to write and compose just Logic. It's way easier for me.
Yeah. And what would you say is your favorite instrument?
I primarily use the guitar. So, but I'm not trying to learn the drum. So that's why you see the drum kit in the back.
Yeah.
Trying to learn that so I can actually, you know, record some tracks here. Don't have to rely on patterns, you know, from libraries and things like that. And I do play a bass as well. I do have a bass. I have a small keyboard as well. So I pretty much have everything that I need in here, this little studio. Most of the tracks that I'm coming up with start here, and then depending on what I need, I record either locally or it could be, you know, remotely in some studios in LA.
Cool. And are you self-taught, or did you have some lessons somewhere? Totally self-taught.
Completely, man. Even with Power Query, same thing. Yeah.
Just learned it the hard way.
Yeah.
School hard knock, trial and error.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. So in terms of, let's get into that then. And you mentioned the book as well. So you're sort of, I guess, well, certainly where I first heard your name was from, M is for Data Monkey, published in 2016, which seems a long time ago now.
Yeah.
And so you were writing that with, the Excel platform as the backdrop. So, how did you end up then reaching out to Ken Paulson to say, hey, do you want to write a book? How did that come about?
So that was an introduction that happened I think that it was in 2014. I translated Rob Colley's book into Spanish. So
right. Okay.
I made a translation, and then I told him like, hey, I'm getting some feedback from people that would like to have a book on Power Query, because Power Query was released in 2013 and it's getting a lot of momentum, but there's not a lot of content. So I reached out to Rob, he reached out to Bill, and Bill said that, hey, I do have someone else that is, trying to make that happen as well. So why don't you talk together, talk it out to see if maybe you can reach something. And that's how it came to be. So
Really? Bill
Bill and Rob put us in connection, and then we figured things out and go from there.
Excellent.
Yeah.
It was again one of those books that just really helped me probably transform my career a little bit. So thank you. I can say thank you very much to both of you.
Yeah.
I'll be seeing Ken on the weekend, so I'll buy him a beer.
Yeah, Ken is primarily the one that. So the way that we wrote the book is that we started by creating a workshop. So the course that we have around delivering Power Query or training people on Power Query, we have that course. And then Ken and I worked together on that, and we packaged that content at that snapshot in time into the book. So that's
Right.
basically the formula that we use. So we have the workshop. Let's take a snapshot of that workshop at a moment in time and then capture it into a book form.
Oh,
and that's
okay.
what.
Yeah.
And that's the formula that we also use with the next book, the next version of the book or the next edition.
Yeah, I think it probably comes across then as well because it's written in a more sort of in-person communication type style. I think if you've been presenting this or trying to do it in workshops, then it comes across as a bit more. And I prefer that sort of technical book than the real, dry technical type stuff that, has never been sort of spoken. I think it reflects it. But I'd like to quote one of your opening statements from that book, right? I went back into it the other day. So bear with me. It's a couple of sentences. So you've written, this is in your intro, Power Query is the new underdog of business intelligence tools. It's a major breakthrough in self-service, business intelligence and data manipulation for the end user or data steward. Our goal with this book is to change everyone's perspective of the tool forever. Okay, but then the next bit really stands out to me. I love this bit. This is the time for the underdog to rise and claim victory, a victory for all of us that work with data. Okay, so I love that. Do you think, are we closer to victory, us people dealing with data? Are we there yet?
I think that we're on the path now that you see Power Query not only in Excel, but also it's pretty much everywhere at this point. I'm using a Mac and it's on Excel for Mac, for example.
Yeah.
And it's not even like, joined to my Microsoft account or anything. So this is just, my personal computer. I have Power Query on a Mac.
Yeah.
And if I don't have Excel for some reason, I can just go into Power BI AI online, or I can go into Power Apps or other hosts that we have where you can just get the Power Query online experience.
Yeah, it's getting everywhere, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And the other thing you wrote in there was, little did I know that this neat tool will solve almost all of my data problems. So what sort of problem, at that time when you wrote that, what sort of data problems were you having? Where were you working when you wrote that or thinking about that?
I went into freelancing on 2013. And it was after I read Rob Colley's book. So all I had at the time was just Power Pivot and Excel. And little did I know that, the real world doesn't have that many data warehouses that you can just leverage, with the data just clean and ready to go. So I came across a lot of data modeling roadblocks because I couldn't change the way that some data sources were being handled or were being passed to the data model. So the moment that Power Query came up, I was able to have this middle layer where I can just, whatever the data source was, I could just manipulate it, shape it into the exact data model that I needed, and then just solve all the problems with correct data model. And it's all about, data modeling at its core. It's just that we didn't have any tools to shape the data at all.
Yeah, yeah.
And
so were you before you went freelance? Then were you you were building Power Pivot reports pre Power Query?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, back in 2011 and 2012. That's when I started using Power Pivot and DAX. And my last job before I went freelancing, I was a sales analyst for, back then the company was 20th Century Fox. So
Okay.
I was primarily just reporting back on the box office here in Central America. So, how many attendees did, that cinema had, just basically that set of reports.
Yeah. So how are you coping without Power Query? What were you just having to manually do stuff, or VBA, or what was?
I was able to get some funding from my manager when I requested to have a database and a fully structured, component where we'll have, things standardized and normalized.
Right.
So there was this person that was actually handling, the input into the database, but I was consuming everything that is in the database.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess now you're at Microsoft.
Yeah.
Is it this beautiful nirvana world where everybody's got Azure SQL databases that are beautifully curated, or are you still helping people with Excel dumps and CSVs and
I think that the core concept is data modeling. So it's not just Power Query. Power Query is just a tool to help you. But if you want to analyze data, and that's usually what most people want to do, then you have to know data modeling. And that's what I'm seeing that, not everyone in the organization has that knowledge, about
Right.
data modeling and DAX and all of that.
Yeah.
But Power Query, it's so easy that you can just, get the UI and follow through and just get the data in the shape that you think it's best. But, knowing what is the correct shape, that's something that you get with experience and with knowledge around what is data modeling.
That's probably that is the challenge, isn't it, for people? For me, for beginners, it's number one, realizing you have to have your data in structured tables, and that there's a massive benefit in terms of reporting to do that. But then the right shape table, and there's no real tool to tell them what to do. There's amazing tools for helping them, but they're not really telling them what to do. So it's I think that's the biggest leap, I think, for people when they're coming to this. It sounds like that's the sort of experience you're having. Yeah.
It's similar to, because most of the people think that they need to comply with traditional pivot tables where you have to have all of the fields in just one giant table.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to data modeling, that can help you get to a certain place, but once you actually reach that place, you're gonna get stuck.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that would be. Here you go. Here's my suggestion then for the ideas. I'll get it on there, I reckon. This would be some useful AI type stuff, right? So you have a big table, a big wide table, and you go, I don't know, improve or normalize or something like this, and it would just create the dimension tables for you and edit your Power Query to just spit out the star schema. That would be awesome. That would be cool.
Yeah, that could be a. I see that more as a an improvement at the data modeling
Yeah,
layer.
yeah.
So if there was a way for do an assessment of my data or
Yes.
my data model, that would be really cool.
Yeah.
Uh, but imagine, and this is what most people, they ignore, is that Power Query has the capability of not only being a tool for Power BI, but also a tool for something else, for other things, for other use cases. And those other use cases might not be specific for data modeling. It could be, for example, that you just simply want to have an ETL component and you want to load the data completely denormalized with all, repeating columns and all that into a data lake.
Right. Yeah.
And you can have some valid points as to why you're doing that. And, Power Query is just a tool. It just helps you get the job done. One of those jobs is to load data and to transform and load data to wherever you want.
Because it's and going back to the Power Pivot experience and that sort of first, and you sort of translating Rob Colley's book. Was that a bit of a sort of wow moment then when you sort of came across the Power Pivot concept?
So when I first learned about Power Pivot, I can't remember if it was through a video from Mr. Excel from Bill,
Okay.
or if it was from something else, maybe one of Marco Russo's and Alberto Ferrari's articles. One of those.
Right.
It was either one of those. But what I can tell you is that after I learned about Power Pivot, I just got super obsessed with it to the point where I ended up taking a workshop from Marco and Alberto.
Okay.
That was in November of 2011. It was an online workshop back in the day,
Yeah, yeah.
and I've been having this, relationship and email communications with Marco ever since,
Okay.
bugging him about DAX and everything like that.
Yeah, yeah. Here's a question then. What is your DAX skill like? Is it pretty good? Medium? Excellent? Where would you put
I'll be honest with you. I stopped looking at updates and all that the moment that variables came into play, so I haven't updated my skills since then.
Yeah, yeah.
But the reality is that once you have a good data model, and that's probably the key to Power BI, is as long as you have a good data model, you should be fine. As long as you don't have like some really complicated metrics or anything like that, you should be fine.
Yeah, yeah.
It's when you get like really complicated, really complex metrics that you might need, some really advanced DAX.
Yeah, yeah. So were you, and then Power Query came along. Were you? When did you become an MVP? Was that post?
I think that it was in 2014 because of the translation that I did to the book.
Ah, awesome.
Yeah, so that was in 2014. I think that I got 2015. I don't think that I got renewed in 2016. Maybe I did. I can't remember. But what I can tell you is that I got dropped twice.
Right. Okay.
And then when I got dropped twice, it was like they hit me and knocked me down, but I stood up.
Yeah, yeah.
I came back like every time.
Wow. And so now you're on the inside. So
yeah, now I'm on the inside. So now I have the MVP. The trophies the awards that they gave you.
Yeah, yeah.
And you have to check out the R MVP because they give you like these medals. They look so cool.
What was that?
So,
what was it? Sorry.
So when you get dropped from being an MVP, so you retire or anything like that, you join this other program that is called R MVP.
Oh, okay.
And it's the old saying is that once an MVP, always an MVP.
Yeah, yeah.
So the Reconnect program.
Right.
And,
yes. Okay. I have heard of it. Yeah.
And so what happens is that they do give you a similar package to the one that you get as an MVP. It's just that instead of being this award. It's just a medal, and this medal looks really cool.
Oh, okay, cool, awesome. So you were, but you, so you'd already done. Oh, so Power Query had come out before you were an MVP,
I think so, yeah.
and then you went and became a consultant.
Yeah.
Freelancer. What sort of clients? What sort of work was that? That's a big move. In Panama as well, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What I can tell you is that it wasn't easy. Being from Panama, it does have its downsides when you're trying to do work remotely.
Right.
But yeah, it paid off. Primarily, I was working as I used to say that I was primarily like a fireman or lifeguard. That was kind of my role. People will call me because of the book. Like, hey, we found the book. We have this issue. Nobody seems to solve it. We need your help.
Right. Okay.
So that was kind of the majority of the customers that I used to have back in the day. And then I also started this journey with Ken where we started the Power Query training. So Power Query training was kind of like our joint venture where we created this enterprise so we can provide custom content or custom workshops and courses around Power Query.
Right. Yeah. And now that sort of migrated into Skillwave with Matt Allington as well. So I was chatting to Matt last week before, can't remember what it was, and he laughed when I asked him about the name Skillwave and how long it took to come up with that name. So,
it was like a 3-week chat, something like that.
Back and forth. So,
yeah. And the colors, actually, the colors of the waves and all that was like a whole month as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So, content took 2 weeks to develop the naming and the no, but there's a lot of good, because that whole platform is set up, internally now, isn't it? It's not sort of a third party hosted thing. It's all hosted. I get you. Are you still involved with that at all? Now you're at Microsoft, or did you have to give up your involvement?
I have to give up pretty much everything so I could join Microsoft. So the company that I had, which was a Microsoft partner, Skillwave, which is super related to developing courses around Power Query. I had to give those up, but I was involved in what you see today as Skillwave, so that website and all that, and that was a strategic decision as to how we wanted to move forward in terms of the vision and all the control that your own platform gives you.
Yeah, excellent. And I think this gets a lot of good feedback there, and I think it's one of those sort of high quality, highly respected things that sort of people can be confident that they're getting some expert training rather than just sort of because there's a lot of courses out there. People have to be careful. There's a lot of cheap, free, all those sorts of things, and you may come across a gem that you get amazing value, but I think also you can also waste your money or get wrong advice. I've seen freebie courses or cheap courses that are just I don't offer any online training, so I'm not biased here. Saying somebody to come to my training, but it's just it's just worrying that some of that stuff isn't really quality controlled. So that's just my rant.
I never had the chance to review other people's courses. I'll be honest with you. We never had the time. I don't think that even Ken has the patience to go through through other people's courses like that.
No,
that will be a bit too much. But the thing that we try to see is, hey, we have these competitors. This is the feedback that we're getting from customers, and the reality is that all of the feedback that we were getting, you can even go today, and they're probably still getting like 4 or 5 stars out of 5.
Yeah,
it's a matter of the opportunity is there. How can we actually reach the people? And none of us are marketers. None of us are, sales people.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to make it work, trying to see how we could figure it out.
Yeah. And I think that, there's two splits to this. There's content first and then marketing later. And then the less value, I think, is the marketing first, content as and that's the bit that I don't like is just somebody spun something up just to make some money, and it's just like, oh. Whereas I just say to people, look, research your trainers, whatever course you're going to do, just look up who the trainer is, check out if they've got blogs, if they've got articles, if they've got books, if they've got channels. If they're passionate about it, they're likely to be up to date and on top of it. So that's my advice to people. But now you're a Microsoft product manager.
Yeah.
So what's that involve?
What do you think it involves when you hear that?
I think it's about decisions around the future functionality and making decisions around prioritizing where the limited engineering time and resources are spent, and trying to probably have a chat with, or maybe not directly with customers, maybe. I'm not sure. And then sort of trying to organize the team in terms of the overall direction of the product. But I'm not really sure what's involved in, if that's right, or what's involved on a day-to-day basis.
I'll be honest with you. The first time that I heard that, that role, like product manager, I thought that it was something else. It was probably like, oh, that's probably the person that, I don't know, handles a physical product. But in our case, we don't really have a physical product.
Yeah.
We have what you call a tool or a technology. And the role that I play is that I try to make this product or this tool go towards a successful path, or basically a roadmap that brings success to this product. That's, in a simplified way, that's what a product manager does.
Yeah.
You have to make your product succeed. And then, around that, you have to define what is actually success, what defines success for you.
Yeah.
And that's where the decision making comes in. But at the end of the day is making sure that your product, is successful.
And because it doesn't ship separately as well, you're sort of, that success factor isn't simply how many units did we ship? So that's a challenge compared to, I guess, maybe I don't know, but maybe the Power BI team have a number of active users metric. I'm just guessing. But yeah, it's a bit of a challenge for Power Query, I guess, because it's in about 8 different products now, isn't it?
Yeah, you could say that. I mean, it depends on how you count them as well.
Right.
We got 2 extensions in Visual Studio Code. How would you, count those?
Okay. Yeah.
We have Excel for Mac. We have a little source, an extension that you have in SSIS or SQL Server Integration Services, so you can create, ETL packages from there.
Okay.
It's in analysis services. You could say that it's also in reporting services because it's in Power BI report server. So that it's in a lot of places. So the metrics, I cannot share too much about it, but what I can tell you is that we do try to take into consideration, each and every single one of them. Right. And then we do try to prioritize, the impact that each of them has and the requirements. So at one point, it feels like we are a service center because we do, there's a dependency between, us, the center, and there's a bunch of people that consume our product, or integrate their product. So we're like a service center, and we try to, provide to this team, to this other team, to this team, and just enough so that they can succeed because we do have, limited resources. We don't have hundreds and hundreds of engineers.
Yeah. And what can you, on that front, and what can you tell us that's sort of coming soon, or that's on the roadmap, that's public, that you're excited about, or that's, you think might make a big difference or a little difference? What's coming?
I think that what I can share at the moment is not that much because we're still working on publishing some of this.
Yeah.
But what I can tell you is if we can leave the link in the chat, that would be amazing or
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
this is going to be published. It's just so that people can check out the release plan.
Cool.
We try to update as much as possible. So whenever you want to see what we're working on, you can just check out everything from this page.
Yeah, yeah. I guess the one I'm aware of is the data flow experience that's going to be rolling out to, at some point, Power BI Desktop, and I guess further down the line, Excel. So that single UI experience. So
Yeah.
that's pretty exciting.
So we're working on what we call a unified experience, which is going to be the modern, what we know now as the modern Power Query experience, or UI, that's available in Power Query Online. So whenever you go into Power BI data flows, Power Platform data flows, or any data flows in the online world, you're going to see this UI that looks different from what you see in Power BI Desktop or Power Query in Excel. That UI in Power Query Online will replace the one that you see in Power BI Desktop and the one that you see in Power Query in Excel.
Yeah.
And some of the features that it has that some people have been clamoring for is my favorite feature, the rank transform. There's also the diagram view, query folding indicators.
So
There's a bunch.
picking up on the rank transform, what does that do? What does the rank transform do?
So the rank transform, something that we saw, even Ken and I think that we even have a pattern for this.
Right.
Or we created a pattern before I joined Microsoft. Imagine that you want to simply go ahead and sort your columns and then just add a index column, just so you can say that, hey, this is the first, this is the second, this is the third, and just rank those rows.
So based on
the order,
individual
basically.
values within. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, yeah.
So you set up the logic on how your columns should be sorted, and after the sorting happens, then we just add, a column that tells you like, hey, this is the first, this is the second, third, fourth. If there are ties, we have an optional way to handle ties as well. So really, really easy. And it can be also leveraged in other scenarios that are a bit more advanced, but it's what most people have been clamoring for, with some situations where the order of the rows needs to be preserved. So if you need the order of the rows to be preserved, this function can actually help you with that.
Okay, cool. That'd be
Yep.
good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you were saying about the diagram view, or the sort of layout view. So that's pretty
Yeah.
cool. That's
Yeah. So that's going to replace the query dependencies view. It's more dynamic as well, so you can just interact with it. But yeah, so that's something that we're going to be transforming.
yeah. That really helped me a little while back when I inherited a client's sort of complicated data flow combination of things, and it was just like picking apart where, for me, trying to understand what was going on without somebody to tell me because the person had left. It was just really helpful, that sort of diagram view, that layout, being able to click on things and just see how everything interrelated. It was just it was great. But I noticed there's a button as well that I hadn't really noticed before on data flows, which was the markers key.
Okay. Yeah.
So what does that do?
That effectively uses the table.add key function. So we can go into the documentation of what the table.add key function does, and that can help us.
Excellent. The internal documentation for functions, I still find it's got a lot better, but I still find it a bit. The examples are not very user friendly, just because I think some of the examples are sort of written with a code, a coding person in mind rather than a business user in mind. So can be helpful, but can be a bit like, oh, not really sure what this is telling me.
Yeah, we're trying to improve that. So you're going to notice if you compare the documentation of the functions today versus a year before or a year prior, you're going to see a huge difference.
Yeah, I've noticed that some of the ones I looked at, a lot more examples and user-friendly stuff and sort of more practical things. Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, that's one of the opportunities that we have to make it more user-friendly in terms of the sample data that we provide. Because all of the data that you see or the usage, start from this table and we give you code. It's a table. It evaluates to a table, but it's in M code. And some people might not, new users might not be able to understand that right away.
I don't like that. I think it just makes the code look more complicated, so it just puts you off straight away, I think. So, real examples, little tables would be great.
Yeah.
So the markers key would be what's the reason to use it, even if it's not just what it does, but what's the reason to use it? Makes merges quicker? I don't really know.
Not really. So when you're trying to define a key, there's some scenarios where you might need to define a key, but the ones that I'm aware of, they're more specific towards the Power Platform data flows.
Oh, okay.
So where you want to figure out, what is the key, and you want to have a visual indicator that tells you like this is the key, because that says that it sets that icon, which is a key, facing downwards, and so it helps you create that key, but it's primarily just metadata. It's not. It doesn't have really an impact. If you can see the sample code, the output, it's really just the same table. It's just metadata being added.
Oh, okay, cool. And my biggest bugbear, I've given you this feedback many times, is the SharePoint and OneDrive connection. So if you've got an Excel file on SharePoint or OneDrive, there's still the experience of on SharePoint, really, the experience of connecting to that is still problematic for end users and hard to discover. So, is that in the works? Improvements in that area?
So that's actually on the roadmap, and what we're trying to improve is a way to simplify a browse experience.
Yes.
For SharePoint list.
Yeah.
And at the moment, we do have a browse experience, but it's for OneDrive for Business, for files hosted on OneDrive for Business.
Yeah.
And we're trying to figure out if we can make that happen as well for SharePoint sites.
Cool. And will when the UI, the Dataflow UI comes to desktop, will that same browse feature come with it then as part of that?
We're figuring that out at the moment.
Okay.
Like even this week we were just talking about it.
Yeah.
So we're trying to see this because the way that it behaves on the online client or the website itself relies on exchanging tokens and some really technical components. So we're trying to figure out if we can make that happen as well on a desktop application where you might not have client secrets for your application.
Right. Okay.
In terms of authentication.
I'll just keep nagging. It's all right.
Yeah.
And what sort of things do you think can be made? Other things can be made easier. Like, I guess for me, API connections are a bit of a black box trouble area. Custom connectors. I know you've done. Can you just talk about the SDK? Because again, that's not something I'm really familiar with. But what is that, and can it help with those sorts of things?
Yeah, so when it comes down to connecting to an API, and this is my experience working with APIs. I used to be a custom connector developer, so I created connectors for Power Query. It's about 80% you fully understanding the API, how it works, the ins and outs of that API, and then 20% implementing that in DM code.
Right.
So the main issue is you trying to interpret the documentation and what it absolutely needs and what is expected, because some documentations from some APIs don't give you too much.
Yeah.
Sadly. So you just have to figure things out. So the idea with custom connectors is that imagine that you have 100 users that are trying to connect to this data source. What if there was this developer that created this new connector, this new data source that could be leveraged by these 100 persons without having to read the documentation or having to understand that API or anything like that. They just want to connect to that data source. They have this connector and it handles everything. So that's the whole idea. There's one developer that can create that connector for either the organization, even for your client. It could be for someone else. It creates that component that works similarly to other connectors in Power BI, and you have it. You basically can extend it. You can add more features to it. You can add optional fields as to how things should work, should behave. You can implement query folding. You can implement a way to leverage more easily some incremental refresh patterns, things like that. So it's all up to you as a developer to define what is the experience that you want to provide to your users. But you don't put the end user who really doesn't have to know about the API, doesn't really have to understand the API or the ins and outs of that.
Yeah.
That's really that's the daunting process. Is you're trying to understand that API.
And it's time consuming, and it's
Yeah.
And so there's an announcement on the Power Query blog. I'll put some links in the notes as well. So you're talking about this sort of Visual Studio sort of development. And again, I'm not I don't really know much about that area. So what was that, and how is it useful to people, or what's changed?
So in Visual Studio Code, prior to October of this year, we had an extension that helped you have a way to basically have syntax highlighting and IntelliSense for the Power Query language. So it was just an editor for a Power Query language. Right. That was it didn't evaluate, it didn't do anything else. It was just an editor for the Power Query language. A lot of people like that. And what we released in October was a public preview for the new Power Query SDK. And the SDK is specifically aimed towards helping you create new connectors for Power Query. So it's a set of tools, a set of features that help you create a connector and test it. The goal is that you can fully test everything inside of that SDK without having to go into Power BI Desktop. And this SDK will replace the prior SDK, which is the one that we have in Visual Studio. So we have one GA in Visual Studio, but we're no longer investing in that one. All the investments are being routed towards this new SDK in Visual Studio Code. And so far, the feedback that we're getting is pretty positive. If you have a chance, go for it and try it out. Even if it's just to see things out, see how things look. Give it a try.
Cool. Yeah, encourage people to give some feedback as well to make things better. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, it's time of the show where we have a little game.
Okay.
Just a minute. So we've got 1 minute to talk on a topic. I don't know if you saw Miguel's attempt at this. He did pretty well, but I actually won this game. Okay. So no pressure on you. If you beat me, then you've got one up on him. So the topic for this little game will be merging in Power Query, and we have to. So either you can start or I can start talking. And if either of us hears the other one pause or say the same word twice, we buzz in and take over the conversation and keep talking. Whoever's talking at the end of 60 seconds is the winner. Okay.
So what do you want me to do? You want me to buzz, like click a
Just
button or
shout
something?
buzz. Just shout buzz. So we're just going to say buzz, and we'll buzz in, right? So
I feel like you made that game specifically for Miguel because he's good at that thing.
he did all right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So either I can start, and then you can buzz in if you hear me pause or say the same word twice, or you can start and I can buzz in, and we can keep buzzing in if we say or just pause to think. The other person buzzes in and takes over. So do you want to start?
I just want to listen to you.
You want to
for
listen
like
to
a
me
whole minute.
talking
For a
to
whole
me?
minute, man.
I can't keep going from there. I'll deliberately make a mistake at 58 seconds or something like that. No. Okay, I'll start then. Let me get I'm allowed to say merging and Power Query more than once, but any other words, like folding or I don't know, whatever it might be, any other words other than and the, you can, if you hear me say them twice, buzz in, and then you've got to take over. Right, let me get my little clock going. And I promise I haven't practiced, as you'll quickly discover. All right. So yeah, if you hear me pause or repeat anything, buzz in. Okay, here we go. Start. Power Query merging is the way of taking some columns from one table and combining them onto the side of another structured set of data. The button is on the Home tab. You can click Merge Queries or Merge as New Query. You can then use the Expand option to actually select which columns you want to grab from the other block of information. You can use fuzzy merging, which I don't recommend unless you want wrong answers or very approximate matches. And the end result can be loaded as a table, and you can disable the loading of that other table, so you don't need to load both at the end result. I got to 1 minute. I made a minute. Man, I got it. I didn't even give you a chance. I feel bad now.
I thought that you were gonna go with something like, have you ever had an issue with like an infomercial, like a commercial completely? Like, have you ever had an issue with VLOOKUP?
Oh, right. Okay. Hold on. Right. Stop. I want to see if you can go for a minute. Right. Do your advert. Right. Here we go. I'm going to time you. I'm going to time you. I want you to do the advert style. Right. Here we go.
Yeah. The advert style, like.
Okay. Go.
Have you ever have you ever had a situation where you wanted to VLOOKUP multiple columns? Is VLOOKUP simply not working and giving you an out of boundaries or some other errors that you're not pulling through? Well, now we have a situation or we have a feature in Power Query that can help you. So give it a try. It's called merge. You can do multi-column merging. You can try to do a merge between the right column and the left columns and select different join kinds. Do fuzzy matching. You can do thresholds of the similarity score. I don't know. It's difficult when you're trying to translate some words from Spanish into English.
Yeah, that's a good effort. Because it's unfair. I've done this a few times. Two, I'm a native English speaker, so yeah, it's a bit of an unfair game, really.
But I always wonder, that's really what Ken and I used to try to do, like try to make it like an advert,
right?
For every single feature.
Yeah, I like it. It's a good idea.
Yeah,
it's a good
yeah.
idea.
It's all about problem statement, all of that.
Yeah. Okay. So talking about merging, any advice for people when they're because merge is quite an expensive, time-consuming event when you're doing your Power Query refresh. So is there, and I see lots of people doing 5 or 6 merges in one query for their data. Is there any advice or techniques or suggestions on why does merging take? Why is it expensive? Why does it take a long time?
It's a case by case scenario. I wish that I had like a concrete, suggestion that would be for every single scenario, but it really depends. In some cases, for example, what if there was a way to fold back some steps? You know, you're connecting to a data source that has query folding capabilities. Maybe you can fold back that particular step that has a join. It could be, for example, that you're doing the join a little bit too early, in the sense that perhaps you're dealing with 10 million rows on one side and 10 million rows on the other one. And at the end of the day, you're just going to end up with 12 rows. And those 12 rows, or the logic behind selecting those 12 rows, has nothing to do with those, you know, that join. So you're doing an expensive operation that, you know, even if we try to rearrange, because we do try to optimize your query internally based on the steps that you have. So we try to transform that into a query plan so that we can try to optimize it. But in some cases, we preserve the logic that you put in place because it might have some specific reasons why you did it that way.
Yeah.
So it really depends. And you know, one of the things, if you have questions around Power Query, we do have forums. So we do have the Power BI commuter forum, and there's a section just solely dedicated for Power Query. So if you have any questions around Power Query, or hey, is this the best way that it could approach my scenario, and you basically describe your scenario, we can try and help you. So there are multiple Microsoft employees trying to answer questions in there. I try to answer questions in there.
Okay,
so
cool.
So if you have any questions around those scenarios, specific scenarios, try to post it in there. We can try to figure it out. The worst thing that could happen is that maybe you found a bug, and I'm actually reading those threads. So if you report a bug, let me know that you've seen this. When if you report a bug, I get those fixed.
Yeah.
We get those fixed. So we do try to fix this, you know, as soon as possible, depending on, as well on the impact. And if this is not a bug, we do have your feedback around something that we could improve. Yeah.
So going back to your comment about the sort of doing the merge too early.
Mm-hmm.
Does that hold true? Let's say you got 2 Excel files as data sources.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you applied a filter step early on,
mm-hmm.
down to those 10 rows, and then did the merge, would that be quicker than?
Yeah.
It would.
Try to do it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Might be a worthy video, actually. I'll give that a go. Okay.
Yeah. So that should, as long as they don't interfere with the logic that you have behind, there might be a way to. So it's all about the logic of how many rows you select. And if there was a way for you to also do the table.select rows or filter on both tables, left and right. That should make things even quicker.
Okay. Cool. Right. I'll give that a go. Hey, you mentioned the query plan. That's another cool feature that's in data flows. And seen a couple of your presentations over recent months, demonstrating what that query plan sort of, is about and how it works. Mm-hmm. It's really interesting to see that sort of process in the back end. Can you briefly, in 60 seconds, give an overview of what that is to get people interested and take a look at it?
Yeah. So when you create a query in Power Query, you have a section that we call the applied steps that gives you all of the steps that you added to that query. It's your query definition. Imagine that we translate that query definition, which is an M script. We translate that into a set of operations that are going to be evaluated inside of the Power Query engine. So the query plan is just a visual representation of everything that's going to happen inside of the engine. And this same concept of a query plan comes from, other databases like SQL Server. You can find out more about what is a query plan. What we have at the moment, it's what's called an estimated query plan. So it's going to be an estimate based on the static analysis of your script. But if you read the other article that we have on, query plan and evaluation, there's more to it because it also depends on your capabilities or the capabilities of your data source.
Yeah.
So
And that can help people just sort of understand how the query is getting processed, and may then give them some insight into how they could potentially speed it up or apply the process differently and those sorts of things, especially when it comes to query folding as well and those sorts of things.
Yeah, so we're also trying to improve that experience so that we can give you more hints as to, what could be considered a bottleneck or what could be an expensive operation. At the moment, what we have some labels. So you're going to find that some nodes are going to say full remote or remote operation. That means that it's not being evaluated by Power Query, but it's evaluated someplace else, like by the data source.
Awesome.
There's another one that is called streaming. So it's how we process things internally. And then there's another one called table scan, I believe, or full scan. And what it does is, for example, when you do a table.sort, in order for you to sort a table, you have to read the whole table. So that's the whole idea. Yeah. So that's the full scan. You have to fully scan the table. With a streaming operation, you don't have to read the whole table to start evaluating. So that's the whole concept.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's really worth checking out. So again, we'll try and put some links in the notes and stuff, which would be good. If you've got any of those presentations that are public somewhere, that would be cool.
Yep.
All right, and life at Microsoft now. So if money and engineering hours were no object at all, what would you have everybody work on all of a sudden? Is there something you would like to just magically fix? Is there such a thing?
I think that I'm working on the stuff that I wanted to work on when I spoke with Miguel. So one of them, I had a few of them. Some of them are cost prohibitive. They're just too expensive to do at the moment.
Yeah.
But we're making the path towards making that happen soon. But yeah, I'm working on one thing. Hopefully, if we have another meeting like this in like 6 months or 9 months, I should be able to share some things with you.
It's awesome. The pace of change is just, mind-numbing, but also exciting and awesome as well. And how quickly things are changing, and it's a total different world now. It's just keeping on top of everything is just it's fantastic that all these things can now be shipped sort of on a monthly basis, 3 monthly basis, 5. But it's just I'm not complaining, but it is just hard to keep up. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
It's just
I can tell you that from experience as well. Trying to keep up with DAX, for example, or calculated tables or like aggregated tables, things like that.
Yeah. It's tricky. And sort of challenges that you maybe didn't expect or did expect at Microsoft, working remotely, traveling to Redmond, what any
I think that
insights?
The moment the one that I'm facing at the moment is daylight savings. We don't have that here in Panama.
Right.
So I used to have a time difference of 2 hours, and now it's 3.
Yeah.
So now it's a bit difficult because now there might be some some meetings that happen at 4 p.m. Redmond, but it's 7 p.m. my time.
Yeah.
And that's
We have so in Western Australia we don't have daylight savings either, so we're normally 2 hours behind Sydney, and now Sydney has daylight savings, and now we're 3 hours behind. So it's we don't have too many clients in Sydney, but it's that extra hour makes a difference.
Yeah.
Anything else? So we do a few bits of wrap up in a second, but anything else we should chat about? Anything, or where can people find you as well? Well, links to sites or YouTube channels, blogs, what?
I don't really have any of those. So at the moment, I think that what I sent you was the Power Query site. So it can be just powerquery.com, for example. And people can find more about it. And if you have the link for the song, hey, I sent you the song, man. So you can put it.
Oh man, I did. I've listened to the song. I like the song. Nice song.
Thank you.
Let's mention the song. So what's all that about? And so you've recorded it. It's on Spotify. What should people search for?
I think that it's probably easier if they find it on your site.
Okay, I'll
You
put
know.
the little link in there.
Yeah, but the name of the project or the artist, it's PAB.
PAB.
And
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
PAB, and the name of the song is Someday Somehow.
Excellent. And
Yeah.
when did you actually release that?
That was released. I think that it was in May, I believe, of this year, something like that. Yeah,
And
May.
how long did that take from sort of
Start.
first sort of starting of, I guess, not necessarily writing it, but the very first sort of bit of recording or the very first conversation with somebody about recording it to the, what was that process like?
That was like 9 months. That
Wow.
was a whole
Okay.
baby.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
that was a baby at that point. But yeah, it took 9 months from me coming up with the full structure. So I had the full structure of the song, instrumental and some melodies, and then from there, yeah, 9 months.
Wow. Cool. And
Yeah.
at the end of it, is it something you're keen to do more of, or something you want to break from? Was it?
So I'm actually before the end of the year, I should be able to release another one. So at the moment,
Wow. Okay.
it's being mixed or in the process of mixing.
Yeah.
And I'm working on a couple of other ones. But it's a different genre. But yeah, I'm just trying to, I've been meaning to come up with my own songs for 15 years now, something like that.
Yeah.
I finally have, all the tools or I guess all the toys to make this happen.
Yeah. No more excuses. I haven't got the tech. You just got to get down and do it.
Yeah. And I do have a good support system, I'll all the engineers and the songwriters and everyone to help me.
Cool. And where do you find it just playing music, and jamming away, just sort of relaxing, a distraction from, you switch off a little bit?
Yeah, I think that it's something that I always wanted to do. I feel super proud of what I've been able to accomplish with this song. Like it's insane how, like, I didn't expect it to sound so good.
Okay.
Production wise, it sounds as professional as it could probably go.
Yeah,
And
it
it was
does.
my
It
first
does.
song.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm coming up with the second one. The second one is also something that I feel super. So it's, I'm. It might actually take time for me to come up with the songs, but the moment that I put them out, it's something that I'm super proud of. It's similar things happen with the book with Ken and I. If we didn't feel proud about it, it wasn't going to be released.
Yeah.
So we were just, waiting for the correct moment and waiting for the right content, and we can put it out. So I guess that's something
exciting.
that, yeah.
Cool. And one of the requirements, for, and I mean, maybe we've just sort of mentioned this as well. One of the requirements from coming on to Power Query Magic is you need to leave, 2 links or articles or, blog posts or whatever, if there's a favorite one or a popular one. So you said you're gonna leave in the sort of link to the powerquery.com website, but anything else on there as well?
I think that the other one is just, I'll leave you a link so that people can reach out to or to check out the song on their favorite platform. So it can be, it can be Spotify, it can be Deezer, it can be Apple Music. Whichever
Awesome.
they prefer, they can just go for it.
We'll definitely do that. And also like to ask people if they've ever had any brushes with fame. So any musicians, any sort of scenarios for you, brushes with fame, famous people you've met, or?
Yeah, I think that I tell you about it in the email. My producer, I'm not sure if you ever heard about that band. It's called Dishwalla.
Okay.
Dishwalla was a band. It's still a band, but they had a really cool hit single back in the 90s,
Right.
Counting Blue Cars.
Okay.
And he's the singer, songwriter of that song. He's doing a solo. His name is J.R. Richards. And he was my producer for that song and the other one that I'm working on. And yeah, I was able to meet him this year in person and talk to him. You know, super nice guy, super humble.
Yeah.
And super amazing at music as well.
Excellent. How did you end up sort of hooking up with him then?
Yeah, I mean that was probably even crazier than meeting Ken, to be honest. Or trying to set up, you know, but you know that's the world that we live in. You know, you don't really have to meet the person, you know, this human being in person to actually work with them or to come up with something great. With the power of the internet, you know, you can do many things. But what I was doing is that I was on this site called soundbetter.com. And on Soundbetter, you're able to find producers that potentially could help you with the song. You can also work with session musicians and all that. So I was able to reach out to him that way. He didn't reply to that platform. He said that he usually doesn't check those out. So what I tried is that I just sent in an email based on an email that I found on his website, I believe.
Okay.
And then we set up a meeting so we could talk on. He was on board, and he's super happy as well with the outcomes. So I'm just happy to be working with him.
Yeah. Very good. That's cool, man. That's good fun. And then the other question is that I've got for everybody is their worst presentation moment. So when something goes horribly wrong, have you had any?
Oh yeah, I think that we all had one moment where the internet just wasn't working or something happened, you know.
Yeah.
Back in 2013, I was doing webinars with this company in Spain, and yeah, I don't know why I was using this software. We were using this software for webcast, and for some reason, it felt like I was trying to connect to a server in Australia, or I was trying to connect to a server in Singapore, like in one of those two places, because the latency was just terrible. And that was my main issue. It's just, you know, imagine like a 15-second delay or like 10-second delay.
Oh, wow.
At that point, we were just like, yeah, it doesn't really function well. So we had to reschedule it. But it was, you know, it was like 500 or 400 people just trying to watch that. And
really?
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty terrible.
Yeah.
The good thing is that, you know, we did another round, and that round we did make sure that everything was in place and that I didn't have this latency issue. And yeah, it came out pretty good.
Cool. All was saved in the end.
Yeah.
Awesome. And finally, if I stranded you on a desert island and you weren't allowed anything other than one object beginning with the letter M, what would you take?
I think that it depends on how you want to stretch it, but I think that I told you like my MacBook at first.
I like it. But, I like MacBook. I think that's a great answer.
But the other thing is, if we want to stretch it out like as far as possible,
right?
You know, there's a brand of acoustic guitars called Martin.
Oh yes.
So So I wouldn't have to worry about batteries. So I will just have that guitar and that's it.
Very good. Very good. I like those two options. Those are good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Matt Allington last week said my dog, and I let him have it. I shouldn't have. So. Oh, right. Lovely to chat to you, Miguel. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And I'll leave links to Miguel's song and the Power Query site and various other things that we've chatted about as well in the notes. Mm-hmm. So yeah, thanks once again, and keep creating the magic that is Power Query. And thanks for making it better and continually improving it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Catch you later on. Cheers, Miguel.
Bye.